Strange but true stories. Tales from the light side, the dark side, and the other side. I'm Steve White. Heavy footsteps down the hall. Balls rolling across the floor unprovoked by human hands. Whispers in the darkness. Shadows and flitters of white in the corner of your eye. The lurking feeling of being watched. These are all things people describe when in the presence of a ghost or spirit or evil entity. Some are harmless, some are not. The following 2 stories were submitted to us by viewers like you, and they both fall into the category of not harmless. The Giggling Girl in White. My family moved into this really cool Victorian house in Odin, Illinois. It was my mom, my stepdad, my brother, and me. I was 8 at the time, and my brother was 6. This house was beautiful, inside and out. I remember the bathroom had this neat bathtub with claw feet, no shower, just the tub. Lots and lots of cool details all throughout. We got all moved in and were really enjoying exploring throughout the house. We had only lived there a short time when really strange things started happening. It was late afternoon and I was in the kitchen helping my mom with dinner. She was slowly teaching me how to cook. My brother was downstairs in the basement shooting at soda cans with his BB gun. The door to the basement was open and we could hear him if he needed anything. The basement was fairly large and had several rooms. With it being an old home, it had a meat cellar and a wine cellar, as well as a storage room. Where my brother had his cans and BB gun set up was about the middle of this main storage room. All of a sudden, we heard a scream, and the basement door slammed shut. Then we heard laughing. We thought my brother was playing a joke on us, so Mom hollered down in the basement through the door window. But when she looked down, my brother was running up the stairs in such a panic and scared out of his mind. It was obvious he hadn't been the one laughing. Mom asked, "What's wrong, buddy?" He said, "The scream! The door slammed! The laugh, and then marbles came rushing out from the room." Mom asked, "What room? Show me." My brother was so scared. His face was a very pale white. But he bravely grabbed Mom's hand and slowly went back down the steps to show what he was talking about. Sure enough, there were 3 little glass marbles near his soda cans where he had been shooting his BB gun. The marbles were covered in dust like they hadn't been touched in decades. If a person had touched one of these, it would have been evident. Then we heard a giggle and saw a white flowing gown in the dark cellar. Then it disappeared. All 3 of us saw it and heard the ghostly giggle. We went back upstairs and did not talk about it for the rest of the night. It scared us so much. We went back to our daily routines. Things were quiet for about a week. We heard nothing of this giggling ghost. We started to get comfortable in the house and just passed it off as some weird occurrence that had some explanation. Even though we did try to pass it off, my brother and I shared a room after that first incident. We did not want to be alone in our own rooms. My brother had bunk beds, and we shared those for the time being. We both got ready for bed, settled in, and were about to fall asleep when my brother and I heard the giggling again. We looked towards our bedroom door to see this little girl about 5 or 6 standing in the doorway. She spoke to us and asked us if we wanted to play.
"Would you like to play with me?"
My brother asked me if I had heard that. I said yes, and then we both screamed for Mom. Mom came running, and we told her what had just happened. The little girl in the white gown had disappeared. Mom moved us into her bed that night, and we were able to settle down eventually. Things again settled back down, and we didn't hear from our ghost for a long time. A few months later, we woke up one morning and noticed in the living room the hideaway bed and the sofa was pulled out. We never used it, nor had any reason to use it. We didn't have any visitors at the time, at least of the living type, who needed a bed. My mom put it away and passed it off again like nothing had happened. That was also the morning that our cat went missing. We looked all over the place, yelling for our cat, Precious Marie. We looked all over the house, all around the yard and the neighborhood. We couldn't find her anywhere. We were so upset she was gone. I mean, cats wander, but she wasn't like that. We searched for Precious Marie all day, but nothing. Mom cooked us a special dinner that night of beef stroganoff to try to make us feel better and take our minds off our lost cat. To make it even more special, we didn't eat in the dining room or at the kitchen table, but instead we sat in the living room that night. I sat on the couch with Mom. This was the same couch that we had to put the pull-out bed back in earlier in the day. My brother was in a nearby chair. I felt something move in our couch. It happened about 3 times before I gave it any thought. I felt it move again. I told Mom about it. She brushed it off. I moved to the floor because it bothered me. My brother moved over to sit next to Mom. Then he said he felt it too. So we got up and pulled the cushions off and pulled the bed partially out. There was Precious Marie. We were so happy to see her, but she was not doing well. It looked like she was on the brink of death. She almost suffocated in that bed. And then we heard the little girl giggle again. And again. And then the little girl said,
That will teach you not to say no to playing with me.
We all freaked out. We shoved clothes in our suitcases, grabbed the cat, jumped in the car, and drove to my grandmother's house. We stayed there for a while. Occasionally, my mom went back to the house, but only to get things we needed. But my brother and I never went back to that house again. Later on, we did some research on the history of the house and found out there had been a little girl that had lived there long ago. One day while she was playing in the basement, she was murdered. We don't like to talk about the events that we experienced in the few short months that we lived there. It still makes me nervous to think about it today, and sad to think about that lonely little girl that never really got the chance to live in that house. The Devil Wears Izod. When I was 14, my family moved from my small hometown in upstate New York to the much larger city of Phoenix, Arizona. Being uprooted from my friends at such a socially delicate age, I was not the biggest fan of this move. But despite all my grumbling, I told myself that I had no choice but to try and make the best of it. However, I would soon find that the experience that me and my family would come to have in our new house would make that much harder than I bargained for. The house itself seemed normal enough. In the beginning, I would get the uneasy feeling here and there, but chalked it up to just being uncomfortable in an environment 3,000 miles away from what was once home. It would just have to take some getting used to. A few months later, I had my first unexplainable encounter. I was home from school and was sitting on my bed doing homework. My back was to my bedroom door. I began to have the feeling of being watched. Thinking that it was my mom or maybe my brother or sister, I looked up and was going to ask what they needed. What I saw startled me. My closet doors in that bedroom were the kind that slid open from side to side and had large mirrors. I didn't have to turn all the way around to see my doorway. What I saw reflected in the mirror was a man, a younger-looking adult leaning against the door of my bedroom. I immediately jumped due to being startled. Aside from the fact that a man was staring at me from my bedroom door, what was equally disconcerting was the fact that he looked identical to the pictures of my dad when he was in his early 20s. I remember this man who was staring at me had on a pair of jeans and one of those polo shirts with an alligator where the breast pocket is on other shirts. The shirt was pink and looked quite preppy. Did we have company visiting that I didn't know about? Why was this person just standing there and not saying anything, just staring? After about 30 seconds, but what seemed like a much longer time, He turned around and walked back down the hallway towards the living room. Thinking this guy was kind of weird, but also knowing it would be rude to stay in my room when company was over, I reluctantly closed my books, left my room, and wandered to the living room. I found my mom in the kitchen doing something, and I expected to also see the guy too, but no one else was there. I asked my mom where the guy went, and she looked at me confused. "What do you mean?" I said. "There was a guy wearing a pink alligator shirt. He looked like Dad, but younger." She then looked at me like I was losing my mind. "Honey, no one else is here. I've been in the kitchen and living room all afternoon, and your brother and sister are in your brother's room." I walked away really confused. When I passed my brother's room, I poked my head in and asked my brother and sister if they saw anyone walk down the hallway. To my dismay, they told me they hadn't. Now I know what I saw, and he was just as real as any human I have ever seen. I thought maybe someone really was here, like a relative on my dad's side I hadn't yet met, since he looked so much like a younger version of my dad. So I went into the backyard looking for him. I even circled the outside of the house entirely, thinking maybe the relative was just a creepy one who stares at 14-year-old girls doing homework in their bedroom. Maybe he entered the house without knocking or without anyone noticing, and now he was outside in the backyard or something. As crazy as that sounds, I thought that explanation would still have been preferable to me imagining a strange man. Nothing. No one was outside either. Feeling like, at this point, I had really lost my mind, I went back to my room to finish my homework. A few weeks went by, and I soon put that whole incident out of my head, chalking it up to the stress of moving to a new state and starting a new school. But not long after that, I saw the same man again. This time I was sitting on my bed reading. I happened to look up at my TV, which was pointed towards me. The TV was off, and in the reflection of the screen, I saw him again. But when I looked behind me, expecting to see him, standing there, no one was there. At that point, I was freaked out and ran out of my room and into my brother's room. I made up some stupid excuse to sleep in his room that night. I didn't tell him about the man right away because I wanted some time to myself to think these things over and come up with some explanation. But a few days later, when I couldn't seem to explain it, I relayed the whole experience to him. He was a little freaked out because he told me that he would get random, uncomfortable feelings like he was being watched in the middle of the night. But when he would go to check, no one would be there. After a few months, the feelings of being watched became stronger, and stress in the home increased. My dad's personality completely changed. He became really angry all the time and violent. It got to the point where no one bothered to talk to him for fear of him exploding over every little thing. Everyone began to have uncomfortable feelings and hear heavy footsteps stomping up and down the hallway. Me, my brother, and my sister were so scared we all began to sleep in my brother's room every night. But sleep was hard to come by back then. I felt drained all of the time, and between my dad's erratic behavior and what was going on in the house, I dreaded coming home from school every afternoon. Unfortunately, I was still new to my school, so I didn't really have friends I knew well enough to visit at their house. So getting away from that place for a few extra hours to go to a friend's place wasn't an option either. I really felt trapped and scared. I hated taking showers there too because whenever I was alone in that bathroom, I would suddenly feel that fight or flight instinct, like something really bad was going to happen at any moment. Although I certainly wasn't planning to stop showering. I mean, it was weird enough being the new girl in school with an upstate New York accent without adding smelly kid to that list. One day I was in the shower and got that fight or flight feeling again. As usual, I did my best to ignore it and continue washing myself at warp speed. It was then that I heard the most evil, inhuman laugh I can conceive. I shouldn't say laugh because it was more like a growl mixed with a laugh. At that point, I got this feeling that if I didn't leave that bathroom, I would get hurt. I can't explain it. I just knew in every fiber of my being that if I stayed, something horrible would happen. I fought my immediate fear and jumped out of the shower, water still running and conditioner still in my hair, grabbed my towel and booked it from the bathroom. I ran into my brother sitting on the couch in the living room and tried to explain as best as I could what had just happened. Although in my scared state, I don't think I did a good job because once everything calmed down, he asked me again to explain it. Anyway, I knew that I had left the shower running and had to turn it off. So I waited a few minutes, and then my brother and I reluctantly went into the bathroom together to turn off the shower. When we got into the bathroom to turn the shower off, we noticed that the bathroom sink was running on full blast also, and was now starting to leak out onto the bathroom floor. I know I didn't turn that sink on, and my brother and I were the only ones home at the time. Still in my towel with conditioner in my hair, I turned the sink and the shower off, and me and my brother proceeded to wipe up the wet bathroom floor. It was the fastest I think two people had ever wiped up a water spill because all the both of us wanted to do was get the hell out of that bathroom as quickly as humanly possible. I ended up rinsing all of the conditioner out of my hair using the kitchen sink. From that point on, I had my little sister chill with me inside the bathroom during shower times, and I did the same for her. Yes, 14 years old, and I was too scared to sleep in a bedroom without my siblings and shower without my little sister being with me. Evil laughs, heavy and unexplained footsteps, and phantom men staring at you from doorways will certainly do that to you. Things like oppressive feelings of being watched, heavy footsteps continued, and my dad's behavior only became more erratic to the point that none of us recognized him anymore. He would spend a lot of time in another room away from us, which was fine with us because he wasn't the same guy I knew. He began to stand in my brother's bedroom doorway at night, just silently standing there for long moments. My brother and I would both catch him doing that, but the both of us would continue to act like we were sleeping. Mostly out of fear because we could no longer predict what my dad would do from one moment to the next. I'm not sure if my sister ever realized my dad would stand at the door in the middle of the night, and we never asked her. She was the youngest and already freaked out enough, so we never really brought up what we didn't have to. One night, the stress was too high in the house, and my mom needed to leave, so she suggested that we go out for ice cream, just her and the kids. Excited about ice cream and relieved to get out of the house for a while, my brother and I went to get into the car and wait for my mom and sister who were still inside the house. They were taking a while, and we heard shouting, my mom and dad arguing again, which was more and more common in those days. So my brother and I just continued to wait in the car for my mom and sister to come out. I was in the passenger seat, and my brother was sitting in the back, his head kind of propped up near the headrest of the driver's seat. Anyway, I looked in the rearview mirror because I was about to ask my brother to hand me the car keys so we could at least turn on the car to listen to some music while we waited. That was when I saw a pair of red eyes staring in our direction from behind the car. My first instinct was to scream, but the overpowering instinct to debunk what I was seeing was more powerful. More than that, I wanted to debunk it. I wanted this to be in my imagination. So without taking my eyes away from that pair of red eyes reflected in the car mirror, I mustered all of my strength to ask my brother in the steadiest voice I could muster, "Look in the mirror. Do you see that?" My brother looked in the rearview mirror and he shakily responded, "Are those eyes, dude? Are those red eyes?" I remember my heart dropping because I wanted so badly for him to say he didn't see anything, or to call me crazy, paranoid. Hell, he could have called me a dumbass and I wouldn't have cared. Anything at all but acknowledge the same red eyes that I was seeing. That moment felt like it went on forever. My brother and I just staring in disbelief at a demonic pair of red eyes. But it must have been only a few seconds because at that moment, the sound of my sister and mom getting into the car snapped us back to reality. My brother and I were quiet throughout our ice cream outing. I think we were both just trying to process what we had seen. My mom interpreted our quietness as being stressed about our dad or the weird things and strange atmosphere in the house. She tried to talk to us about it while we were eating our ice cream. She was partly correct. We were stressed about the weird things going on in the house, but we didn't mention those red eyes to her until years later. None of us have mentioned much about the experiences in that house. I guess it's because none of us want to relive it. My parents decided to divorce and the entire family moved out of that house a few weeks later. We only lived in that house for about 4 months or so in total, but that was long enough for me. Once we left, my dad immediately returned to his old self, so much so that I decided to live in an apartment with my dad while my brother and sister stayed with my mom elsewhere. A short time later, we ran into our neighbor from when we had lived in that freaky house. She was a nice old lady with way too many lawn decorations who mostly kept to herself. What she told us, though, chilled us to the core. She said, "The people who moved in after you seemed nice enough. A younger couple with a son about 10 years old. Couple months after they moved in, the dad hung himself, though, in the backyard garden shed. Worst thing was that it was the little boy who found him there." When we first moved into that house, I heard her mention to my parents when she came over to greet us to the neighborhood that no one ever lived in the house for very long. I didn't give her comment much thought at the time, but after experiencing all that, it makes me wonder if the reason why is due to everyone experiencing what we did. And it also makes me wonder if my dad would have met the same fate as the guy who had moved in after we left, just because my dad had seemed to change into a completely different person while we were there. I haven't heard from our neighbors since then, and every once in a while I drive by that house today. I still get chills just knowing it's there. I've told my husband about it too. Luckily, he's open-minded and doesn't think I'm totally off my rocker. I could never explain the man who looked like a younger version of my dad, and thought maybe he was the one who did all the stomping at night, the evil laugh and red eyes. About a year ago, I was watching one of those documentary-style ghost shows. Maybe it was Paranormal Witness or Paranormal Survivor. I don't remember the name of it. Anyway, one of those documentary-type ghost shows where they don't hunt ghosts, but instead the ones who had encounters tell their stories. One of the episodes had a woman who kept seeing the ghost of her husband, but the weird part about it was that her husband was alive and living with her. But she would see him standing there staring at her when she knew he wasn't home. At one point, even saw him walk through a wall. When she spoke to some guy about it who deals with paranormal things, he said that it was her husband's doppelganger, and that seeing someone's doppelganger is supposed to be some warning that their life is in danger. It makes me shiver to think about what could have happened if we had stayed a little longer in that house. Even though today I live maybe a 15-minute drive from that house, you could offer to pay me all the money in the world, and I still wouldn't step foot back on that property. This has been another strange but true stories sent to us by viewers like you. Do you have a strange, paranormal story to share with us? We'd love to hear about it. Send us an email to strangebutTrueStories2@gmail.com. Tell us what you thought of these stories in the comments below, and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks to those who have, and at this point, with us knocking on the door of 100,000 subscribers, we are both humbled and amazed at the love and support from this community. You are indeed a special group. I'm Steve White. Thanks for watching. Until next time.